大家好，我是康Yun. So I just wanted to make a little video, or this may be long because I'm probably going to rant, about the Demon Souls remake. I have the cover inversed because that's the original cover redone, and I like that. This game is the most beautiful and strikingly breathtaking game I've ever played. At first, when I saw the trailer, and there was a lot of skepticism around the art direction that they went with this game, I wasn't sure what to think. On one hand, I thought it looked amazing. On the other hand, I thought, what if they, maybe screw this up? Demon Souls, I'll start out by saying, is my favorite game of all time. My story of Demon Souls goes back to about 2011 when I first got a PlayStation 3. I had played a few games on it. I got the PlayStation 3 late, like a lot of people, because it took it a while to build up a decent library of games. But by the time I got it, a lot of games had come out. I got it in the end of 2011. And I had played the Uncharted games, the first one and part of the second. I platinumed the first one and kind of thought, this is my first introduction to the trophy system, and I thought, oh, this is kind of cool how it tracks your progress in the game. Sometimes the trophies seemed a little silly, but I got the platinum trophy for Uncharted in just over a week, and I thought, okay, well, let's try to do a game that's a little harder. So I looked up something like difficult games to platinum on the PlayStation 3. And the top of the list was a game called Demon Souls. I had never heard of it before. And I read a little bit about it, and I remember people saying it was a challenging dungeon crawler of a game that went back to the, days of when games were challenging and made you start from the beginning of the level. And I thought, I'd like to check this game out. I guess it's a PlayStation 3 exclusive. I called up the GameStop and I asked, do you have a copy of this game called Demon Souls? And the guy on the phone says, you mean the best game ever made, dude? Yeah, we got that game. You need to come buy it. So I was kind of taken aback, like, oh, wow. So I think that day or later that week, I went and bought the Demon Souls, and it was the same guy at the counter at the GameStop who was talking to me like, oh, dude, you are in for a hell of a treat to ride, or whatever he said. And he's pulling out his phone and showing me his level calculators, and I'm like, what is this level I felt like I was getting into something way over my head. And he was like, it's got a steep learning curve, but once you get into it, man, it's a hell of a game. And he basically kind of overwhelmed me with his enthusiasm for it, but also at the same time made me think like, okay, so somebody really digs this game, and there seems to be quite a bit of a following around this game online. So I take it home and I start playing it, and I eventually I look up a sort of a not so much a guide, but as like a suggestion as to what to do. I picked the Temple Knight as my starting class because people were saying that was a good starting class. And I think I didn't like that the moveset of the halberd, when you one-handed, I didn't like that because it kept bouncing off the walls in close corners. I hadn't really gotten comfortable with swapping between one and two-handed at that point. But I managed to get through Baltaria 1, the first level, and I got to the second part and continued to die over and over to the dragon, or I'd get to past the dragon and somehow I died to the dogs under, the Lord's Path, that the famous second part where everybody dies to the dragon. And I was having a very difficult time with this. I was like, well, I only have only a quarter of my health, or 2/4 of my health, or 3/4, whatever, with the cling ring, half my health. So I kept using the stones of ephemeral eyes that I was getting to have more health, but then I would die. Then I'd have to go back to the Nexus, and then I go back, and then the tendency would get darker, and I was like, what is this? Why, the game was getting harder because I was dying in human form, and I exhausted my consumables. I hadn't grasped the concept of having to buy and farm for consumables, and I was just like, well, this is dumb. I can't heal myself. I have I don't have my whole full health bar, and I just kind of felt like frustrated and stopped playing the game for a few days to a week or so. And I was, but the thing is the game stuck in my head, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it was kind of like, everybody is saying this game is so good and it's challenging, but once you get it, it's supposed to be, amazing. So I decided that if I was going to play it, I should use some sort of guide my first time. And I looked up a walkthrough that basically said to start with royalty. Even though the class started at level 1, which seemed counterintuitive, you actually are better off. It's kind of like the game's organic built-in easy mode picking that class, because you have spells. And the magic in that game is very abusable, and you can just range things. And following this guide, I basically made a glass cannon mage where all I leveled up was my magic and faith and intelligence. Didn't level up my health at all, which I thought was strange, but I just sat back and ranged everything, and I beat the game like that. And it sort of taught me how to play the game, and I was able to beat it, and I ended up thinking like, okay, I get this. And then once I beat it that way, I decided, well, what if I beat it without magic? And then, and then it just went from there. And I played that game so many times over on so many different ways. I made many different builds. At the time on PS3, you could only make 4 characters. You could only make 4 profiles on your account on Demon Souls. So I would I remember I made a second account just so I could have more characters on Demon Souls, because I wanted to have more than just those 4 to use. I wanted to make more builds. And then eventually, it wasn't even until like later on that I discovered the online PvP system and all of that. And that's when I was just like, and I had already enjoyed the game, and then I suddenly saw like there was a whole PvP thing where people would fight each other, and there was like PvP fight clubs and stuff, and I was just like, whoa, this is so cool. And the game just got even more intense from there. And then it went from me trying to, build characters to play the game, to building to fight other players. I can say I've played all of the Souls games since, but Demon Souls was the one that got me into it. And to this day, Bloodborne was a close one, but Demon Souls, there was something. Maybe it's because it was the first one I played, but even still, like I eventually sold my PS3, and a couple years later, after I had my PS4 and had been playing, I played Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2 Scholar, and Dark Souls 3. I went and bought a PS3 again to play Demon Souls again, because I just wanted to play it, and I missed playing it. And I've played that game on and off for years now, and I've probably played through it more than any of the other games. And when I say played through it, I mean played through the game and beaten every level and all the bosses and gotten to the max new game cycle. I don't know if I've ever gotten to a max new game cycle on any of the other games, because while I may have more hours logged into those games doing co-op and PvP, I played through Demon Souls. Demon Souls is shorter, but for me, I had the most fun playing through that game, and I enjoyed it more than any of the others when I reflect back on it. And it was just a treat because every boss in that game is unique and different. And while the bosses are not necessarily hard from a standpoint of learning their attack patterns and dodging at the right time, they're more sort of where you have to think about it rather than react or memorize its patterns. I mean, there is memorization involved, of course, but if you compare it to games like Dark Souls 3, where a large majority of the bosses are just hyper aggressive, humanoid type enemies that have irregular attack patterns that throw you off from your dodges because the developer from software coded these enemies so that they will throw the player base off who are used to dodging in a certain way to make the game more difficult for players like that. I mean, there's something to that, and those bosses are fun, but they're not as memorable, or at least in my opinion, cool bosses, a lot of them anyways, as the bosses in Demon Souls, which for the most part are not that difficult fights, but they just feel more memorable because they don't go by the typical game formula where, one of the, I don't want to have any spoilers necessary for anybody who hasn't played this, but, there's a lot of things where the bosses go against what you might expect of a boss to do. But that's not to say Demon Souls is not an easy game. I mean, by today's standards, if you're used to playing games like Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3, especially with the DLCs, yeah, Demon Souls is probably, it's not as challenging. But at the same time, you can make Demon Souls quite a bit harder if you play it in pure black tendency. And if you're on a high new game cycle, playing through some of those levels is probably some of the hardest stuff I've played in any of a Souls game. Because I have several characters that are on max new game cycle where the difficulty maxes out. And you have pure black tendency, which makes it even harder. Excuse me. Yeah, I don't even know if I've even beaten Demon Souls on max new game plus at pure black world tendency, even on a leveled up character. I think I'm sort of stuck. And there's another thing. Demon Souls has its glitches, and there is an exploit where you can dupe items, which is fun, and I've done that plenty of times, especially when you're making a PvP build. That's super useful. But for the sake of my own personal, as I gotten older, wanting to challenge myself, I have a character that I've never used the dupe glitch, and I'm on max new game plus, pure black world tendency on, obviously on the original Demon Souls. And I have yet to beat that game. It is quite hard. It's quite hard. I'm putting maybe a little bit of arbitrary restrictions on myself, which I suppose I don't have to do that, but it's more so for the challenge. And so all of that being said, that long-winded talk about Demon Souls and how it's my favorite game. How then, with this game being so close to my heart, Demon Souls for me is basically a 10 out of 10. If you want to put a rating on it. I don't not like to do that necessarily, but if people want to do that, I would say it's a 10 out of 10. So my expectations were pretty high coming to the remake. I had a lot of worries. I was worried that they would, because of how the Souls series have shifted and gone in the direction of sort of the combat, I was worried that they would take elements from Dark Souls 3 and implement that into the Demon Souls remake. It's not from Software, it's Blue Point Games, and After playing, I think my playtime last night when I stopped was 9 hours. I have beaten 6 bosses. And I think 6 if you count the phalanx. That's 1, 2, 3, 6. Only 5 actually. Yeah, I think only 5. So I'm not even that far in the game. I haven't even gone to 2 of the levels yet. But so far, it is incredible. It's done so well. I love the art direction that they went with. It is different, but it's different in a new way. It's like I tried to think of an analogy, and the best thing that I could think of was it's like when you grow up and you have some toys these are your favorite toys, right? And then years later, the toys somehow come to life or become animated, and their faces that used to be painted on are suddenly fully sculpted and animated, and they have personalities and emotions that you didn't realize. And it's like the core of what those toys are is still there, and you can see it, but you're seeing them in a new way, and almost like seeing them again for the first time. And that's kind of what it's like playing Demon Souls. It's like playing my favorite game again for the first time, but while it's so familiar, everything is familiar. Like I'm playing through it as I would play. Like I sort of mapped out a playthrough of how I was going to play the remake on the original. I started a playthrough. I didn't finish it, but I basically had in mind, and that's another thing I love about Demon Souls, is how open it is. You can just play the game in so many different orders, depending on what kind of character you're trying to make or what you're trying to do. And what I ended up doing is basically just replaying through what I was just doing on the original, days earlier on the remake, and everything is as I remember it, but it's just it's so much more on this level of immersion. The controller, I mean, I could spend just as much time talking about the controller, the DualSense, the sound, the 60 frames per second, the beautiful graphics, the load times. I mean, they've made some changes, but I think the changes they've made are by and far great. When you pick up an item burden is still in the game. Now that might piss off some people. I personally feel like if you're gonna make a Demon Souls remake, give me Demon Souls as it was. That's what I wanted, and that's what they have done, as far as I can tell. They didn't add a bunch of Dark Souls 3 stuff. They didn't add jump attacks. They didn't add plunge attacks. They didn't give charge attacks. They didn't like the mechanics, the AI of the enemies is as I remember them in the original. Like some of the enemies are supposed to be kind of dumb because they're mindless zombies, and they didn't make them hyper aggressive with endless combos like they are in Dark Souls 3. A lot of the enemies, it's balanced around demons. It's Demon Souls. It's Demon Souls. They've added quality of life improvements where you can warp from archstone to archstone within a given level. That is really nice. They've added a balancing mechanic of the grass. This was really interesting. Crescent moon and half moon grass, you can hold 50, and late, full, new, and I believe dark, you can hold 25. But the thing is the better the grass, the higher the weight. And so that's something that, like, because item burden is a thing, if you have a lot of gear on and you have a lot of extra weapons and such, and you're trying to do PvP and you want to have all this, dark moon grass that's instant full heal, instant all status gone, all the status ailments gone, well, that 25 dark moon grasses that you have are going to be quite heavy, because when going into back to what I was saying, when you pick up an item, if it's going to overburden you, it tells you the weight of the item. It doesn't tell you what it is, but it says it weighs this much, and it doesn't pick it up, and it stays there, which is so cool because there were times in the original where you would of course you would forget how much you're carrying because that's not something you constantly monitor, and you go to pick something up and you're like, oh, you can't pick it up, it would overburden you. So that's why you always had the Ring of Herculean Strength. But if for whatever reason you don't have it or you already had it equipped, you'd either have to drop a bunch of stuff or you just leave and you can't pick that item up. But you can leave the level, go back, the item is still there, and you don't lose it. I love that. And it tells you how much it weighs, so if you do want to drop a few things to pick it up, then you can do that. I think that is really good. The one thing I noticed is they didn't limit how much spice you can have. They still have fresh and old spice, which spice, of course, restores your MP. And you can have 99 of each. So that, I think, I'm wondering if they may patch that, because that seems, and that was something that was quite, people thought was a bit broken in the original, is that if you were a magic user, you could just have 99 of each spice and just keep casting, keep eating the spice. You basically had limitless magic. And that was part of the fun of Demon Souls 2, was because it was so, unbalanced, you could break the game. You could make it as easy as you wanted it in that regard, if you had the means to. So I'm wondering, I guess I didn't check the weight of the spice. It may be that it's a lot heavier, but it seems like that I guess I could have foreseen putting maybe a limit of 50 or 75 fresh spice and maybe 25, 50 old spice. I think I could foresee that happening in a patch. Not sure. But yeah. Just I am blown away by this game. And I'm only 9 hours in, and like I said, I only fought and killed 5 bosses. So wow, dude, it is just something to behold. This is the best. I mean, I'm definitely biased, but I think there hasn't been a stronger launch title for the PS5 or for any console that I can think of in any generation. This is the Demon Souls being on the PS5 is, in and of itself, along with that DualSense controller, makes any argument about the Xbox irrelevant, in my opinion, because, and they even have proved so far that a lot of the games that are supposed to run better on Xbox run better on the PS5 right now. So I don't know what's going on with Xbox there, but these exclusive titles and the fact that Demon Souls is a PS5 title, that, oh man, it's so funny, because this is a game that came out of nowhere, that almost never even left Japan, and got across the world by just word of mouth through the internet. People saying, hey, this Japanese game is pretty cool. And then people they made an Asian version, so people were importing the Chinese Asian language version, but because you could play it in English with poor translation, but still, it caught on so much that they eventually released it in North America and Europe. And it was the founding of what became the Dark Souls franchise. And in a way, I was a little bit, I always felt like whenever I would go online and because everybody knows how big Dark Souls is now. It's everywhere, and there's a huge player base for it. A lot of those people came in with Dark Souls or Dark Souls 2, 3, Bloodborne. A lot of them have never played Demon Souls because it was a PS3 exclusive, and while the PS3 eventually outsold the Xbox, at the time, a lot of people didn't have the PS3. So I would get a little bit upset when people would always talk about how groundbreaking Dark Souls was, when most of everything that was done in Dark Souls was already done 2 years earlier in Demon Souls. It's just that Dark Souls had a wider spread because it was on it was on Xbox and eventually the PC. So I'm so glad now that people who are now getting into this next generation will be able to experience Demon Souls again. And I'm even more excited because now that I've played it, and basically, in my opinion, they haven't changed it from what it was in terms of its core mechanics. Like, it's still Demon Souls. As brand new next gen as it is, it plays like the original game. But the animations are just, oh, they're so good. Like, I'm playing as a priest. I have a mace. And swinging that mace, man, at these enemies, you just feel it. You you throw your weight into this mace and just, oh, you just crush these enemies. It's so cool. And it's so satisfying to just land attacks. So, like, when an enemy attacks you and you block it with your shield, you really feel that in your shield, and you're like, okay. And then you just go in and just, bam! Like, it's so good. It is so good, guys. I cannot tell you enough. I mean, I'm hyping this up. Obviously, this is my favorite game, and I had my apprehensions about it, but as far as I can say right now, all of that is out the window with how well done this is. I may take a few things. There are a few things that I've found that I wasn't sure how I felt about, but honestly, it was all really minor points. And like, when it comes to certain designs, and I think it is all going to just grow on me. Like, it's a different direction of art, that's for sure, but it stays true and faithful to the original in pretty much every aspect that I have seen so far. An example of something that where my expectations were like surpassed and I was even blown away was yesterday I fought the Dirty Colossus, which is not considered to be one of the more memorable bosses, and it was one of my least favorite. And that was an intense ass fight yesterday with that boss. Like, I was definitely, for perspective, I'm not leveling my character up at all. And I didn't have a very upgraded weapon. And I was fighting this Dirty Colossus, and I just, that level is hard. 5-2, Valley of Defilement, the swamp, that level is very hard. It's probably my favorite level in the game. And I did not want to die because I didn't want to have to go through that again. So I was just playing it very safe, fighting that boss. But man, is that intense. Like, the intensity of not wanting to die, and then the way in which they made that boss, and how the sound effects with the controller and the animations and the graphics, it's just like, I wasn't sure what to expect from Dirty Colossus, but I was just like, holy crap. Like, they took a subpar boss, in my opinion, and just like blew me away with it. And pretty much every boss has been like that so far. I mean, but the Dirty Colossus, in a lot of ways, was the biggest like surprise for me, because like I said, it wasn't one of my favorites, and I was happily surprised that it is now feels the way it does. So this video has gone on quite a while. I'm almost at half an hour. But this is, in a nutshell, in a big nutshell, my sort of early first impressions, 9 hours into the remake, and sort of my history with Demon Souls. And yeah, that's sort of what I have to say right now. I'll have more, obviously, later, but if you guys can get your hands on a PS5, this is going to blow you away. And another thing, this is another point, having a 4K TV is a game changer as well. So, until then, 我是康云，Umbasa.